Sources.
Before we begin the chapter, let me tell you that you may click on any one of the tabs given below to learn about the topic of your choice.
Introduction. Sources are the very backbone of history. In other words, to know history, we must have some definite sources in our hand. Unfortunately, however, there was no systematic tradition of history writing in ancient India. The long, untiring efforts of historians brought numerous sources to light. With the help of these sources, the history of ancient India can now be fairly reconstructed.
In this chapter, we will be learning the significance of sources that help us to study history. Objectives. In this chapter, we shall learn about the following concepts. 1. Literary sources, under which we have A. Written literature, B. Oral literature. 2. Archaeological sources, which includes A. Inscriptions, B. Coins, C. Monuments, D. Other ruins. Let us begin our session by discussing the significance of sources.
History is a systematic study of the past. History is written on the basis of sources. Hence, there is no source, no history. As the stance of history, historian is like an advocate. The advocates present their arguments on the basis of followed evidences and sources related to the case. Similarly, historians collect the sources, subject them to critical examination, analysis, and then write the history. If the things used by human beings in the past have remained, then they are called as the sources by historians.
So, what are considered as sources to write history?
The agricultural tools left by the earlier people, forts, coins, inscriptions, arms, temples, and other religious buildings are considered as sources to write history. These sources can be divided into two: literary sources, archaeological sources.
Let us now look into the features of literary sources.
There are two types in literary sources: written literature, oral literature. There are two types in literary sources: written literature, oral literature.
Let us discuss these individually. Firstly, written literature.
Written literature is the main source of literary sources. Literature can bring the contemporary social life of the times of the writer alive to us. A literary work portrays the existing aspects of life either directly or indirectly.
There are two types in written literary forms, namely,
native literature. The literature created by Indians in native language is called as the native literature. Literacy works in Sanskrit, Prakrit, Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, Hindi, Marathi, and in many other native languages are the sources.
So, which work can be named as native literature?
Kautilya's Arthashastra, Kimhala's Gadasprita Sthiti, Vishalpadatta's Mudra Rakshas, Bhanabhatta's Harshacharita, Pampa's Vikramarjuna Vijaya, Sangam literature, and many other such literary works can be named as native literature. Pampa's Vikramarjuna Vijaya, Sangam literature, and many other such literary works can be named as native literature.
Next
foreigners who visited India as travelers, ambassadors, businessmen, officials, and missionaries have recorded their observations and experiences in their works. These works are considered as foreign literature.
Which are the important foreign literature sources? Megasthenes Indica, Yuan Sang, Siyuki, Ptolemy's Geography, Babur's Suski Babri, and others are the important sources. Now we move on to oral literature.
Oral literature means the folk story, folk songs, folk legends, ballads, and others that pass on from one person to another by word of mouth. Since the beginning of human life, human beings are passing on their experiences in the form of story, songs, and ballads orally from generation to generation. The folk people have created ballads about their local heroes. There are ballads on Kumaragama, the Nayakas of Chitradurga, Kempe Gowda, Tippu Sultan, Sangoldi Rayanna, Kittur Chennamma, Sindhura Lakshmana, Meadows Taylor, and others. Legends mean the local mythological stories. There are legends behind the names and places like Shravanabelamula, Bengaluru, Koppada, Pattadakallu, Gokarna, and Mysuru.